morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
The scriptwriters of Hollywood come up with some amazing stories for movies and TV shows, and I guess it takes a lot of imagination to dream up some of these plots. But you know, if they could somehow tap into the true life adventures of so many men and women who have lived a life with horses and cattle and Mother Nature in the ranch lands of the West, they'd find stories better than anyone could imagine.
Some of them did break, and I rode after them and turned them back, and I was whistling, and my tooth popped out of my mouth.
Yes, this week we'll continue with the memories of the late Fred Long. Came to North America from Ireland, lived a full life as a cowboy, horse soldier, and a brand inspector, and that life ended way too soon. Baxter Black will look at making donations rodeo style.
Oh, I've made quite a collection. I only think it's fair because pieces of my body I left scattered everywhere.
And we have a lot to cover on the rangeland news, including this item.
Beef producers are losing $400,000 in sales per day.
And our pal from Wyoming, Andy Nelson, nails it in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight with Cowboys on Facebook.
And I make sure to post a new life event each time that I'm on a cow calf.
On the Irvine Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, I'll talk about getting up to speed, how to ride faster with more confidence. And I'll dig into the vault for another classic song of the West and the story behind the song. And you'll hear more memories of Fred Long after Justice and the Montanas take us way up the mountain.
Once he was younger, once he was strong, once he could rope 'em and brand all day long. But he'll keep on pushing till the end of the trail. And don't try to stop him, 'cause he's grizzled as nails. Somewhere over the mountains there lies a valley serene. Look close and you'll find an old cowboy straight and tall on a strawberry roan. His horse and his saddle, they're all that he owns. He talks slow and easy with few words to say, but the life that he's living is fading away. Somewhere over the mountains there lies a valley serene. Look close and you'll find an old cowboy living the life of our dreams. Come next October, he'll ride into town where he and his partners, they'll rendezvous down. They'll drink up some whiskey, they'll tell yarns and sing till the high lonesome's calling to come back next spring. Somewhere over the mountains there lies a valley serene. Look close and you'll find an old cowboy living the life of our They're far from the towns, they don't have no TVs, and they can't hear the sounds of the world as it changes, for the worst I would say. So I'm packing my ponies, leaving today to go somewhere over the mountains, to a valley they say is serene, just to become an old cowboy. Living the life of our dreams.
you heard some great stories from a legend of the Northern Range, Freddie Long. Born in Belfast, Ireland in 1938, came to North America in 1959 and lived through every cowboy and horseback adventure you could imagine. We lost him in 2003, and I got to know Fred, way back in the 60s. And in 1997, we recorded a memorable conversation.
And I sure got into a lot of jackpots in the early days. It makes me cringe to think of some of the things I did.
I'd like to hear some of that.
Well, you're young and you're keen, so a cow breaks. So there you go after it, even though there's someone else has started after it. This puts the cow in between the two of you. We called it railroading. Now the cow doesn't have anywhere else to go but straight ahead. And both guys are racing and racing each other. Next thing you know, you hear the fence and ping, the cow's through the fence. Well, a lot of that was actually my fault. And I quickly learned, well, the guy soon got after me hard enough. Ed Gardaby sure did. As soon as someone else was already had to jump on a cow, just pull up and go back to the herd, and he'll be able to curve it around to the herd,
Well, there's a lot of things you learn by trial and error, as far as and there's almost kind of a code of etiquette that eventually you ride with enough really experienced hands, nothing has to be said, it's understood. But you get a group of people they're just in the learning process, or wannabes or whatever, and you're holding a bunch for pairing up after you've moved a bunch of cows and young calves or whatever, and one cow that doesn't have her calf and she takes off out of the bunch, you want to hold her in. Everybody leaves their position, goes after that one cow. Pretty soon you spill the whole bunch, So there's a lot of those things a fella has to learn.
I remember one time, I got into a fight and got my front tooth knocked out, so I had to have a little cap put on it. I just had a
Were you standing up talking when you should have been sitting down listening?
Yeah, well, when you're young, you never back off from nothing. And I got a hell of a good smack in the mouth and lost this tooth and got a cap on it. And of course, it worked loose. And on the minor ranch, a fellow by the name of John Morley and I were holding about 600 head, and we were just circling them. We didn't even have a fence to help us. They were just out on that sagebrush prairie, on the sandhills. And some of them did break, and I rode after them and turned them back, and I was whistling, and my tooth popped out of my mouth. Well, to hell with the cows, I bailed off a horse, and here I am sifting through the sand trying to find my tooth. I never did find it, of course.
Well, there's more about the life and times of Cowboy Fred Long when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Fred Long rode the ranges of Saskatchewan, BC, and Alberta, and for several years he trained cutting horses at the famous Douglas Lake Ranch. He's ridden with legends, and as he described in our conversation, he's learned a lot of tough lessons.
You end up doing things like that I wouldn't think of doing now. You learn how to make the job that much easier. When a cow, by the time I was at Alkali, when a cow would break down a fence line, I would go after it. And Alkali was pretty well mounted compared to some ranches, a lot of thoroughbred in their horses. And when I drew level with it and I could see that cow change leads to turn, then I'd ask my horse to turn. I didn't wait till I was by it. Yeah. And it got so the horses I rode would start turning more and more with the cow, and that started making it a lot more pleasurable. These fellows that get bored when they're out there working cows, they're just not using their own ability and brain to make things better and to improve the horses that they're riding. And the real improvement came when I went to Douglas Lake with the Chunky Woodward was alive back then, and Dave Batty, old Jim McDonald, Art Graves, guys like that were really keen on working cattle. And Chunky was really keen on the cutting horse end of it. And that's where I worked and traveled with them, clear down to Sacramento and over to Gainesville, Texas, and all over.
Who were some of the horses that you traveled with? back at that time?
Oh, Stardust Desire,
Really?
Peppy Sand, the ones that made the money, it made the headlines, you might say, were Peppy Sand, Stardust Desire, Moira Girl. The Tivio horses with quite a string of those, Benita Tivio, Tippy Tivio. But what I got out of it was how to go to training horses. And I learned that, yes, they have to have it bred into them, but you got to give them the opportunity to work the cow. Set it up for them, you know, shape it up for them so they can.
Don't put them in a position where they're at a real disadvantage.
That's right, where they can't feel like they've accomplished something. I don't think they're a whole lot different from us in that respect. You could take the heart out of them by just knocking on them and not actually showing them what to do. And so we ended up making that ranch's reputation, you know, famous all over North America. Matlock Rose was the one who won the world on both Peppy Sand and Stardust Desire, you know. So they didn't really, as far as money goes, to start making any until he took over that top end of the training.
Legends were young when the range was still open. The cattle still roamed on the land. And they watched and they listened and they learned from the old ones the business of making a hand. And they still remember the days with a wagon working cattle in the old cowboy way. And those times have changed, the legends ride on, and they're still riding with us today. Buster and Shorty, Matlock and Don, Mr. Pat, he's still horseback, he's still keeping on. There's a new generation, and they're coming on strong. Where would they all be today if the legends of cutting hadn't shown them the way? Buster and Shorty, Matlock and Don, Mr. Pat, he's still horseback, he's still keeping on. There's a new generation, and they're coming on strong. But where would they all be today if the legends of cutting hadn't shown them the way? Buster and Shorty, Matlock and Don, Mr. Pat, he's still horseback, he's still keeping on.
Yeah, a fitting song for this conversation. Ian Tyson's Legends of Cutting, Matlock Rose, Shorty Freeman, Buster Welch, and Don Dodge. Boy, I wish I could have interviewed them. Now, among the many things Fred Long did from the back of a horse was actually capturing wild horses.
Did you ever get in on any of that yourself?
I did. I caught some down by Haynes Creek. Made myself up a bunch of piggin strings and out of binder twine and rode out in the wintertime. They just lined out and ran from me, and I just rode up and roped them from behind. They were really easy to rope a wild horse when you get right up on it, because it gets scared and hold their head up like a llama, and pretty easy to catch them. And I'd tie a foot to a tree and then go on and rope another one. And then it takes about 10 minutes to train a wild horse to lead. Once you get something on his head, and don't pull him, let him do the pulling, and wait till he jumps forward a few times, and then ride away and wait for him to give you some slack. He'll follow your horse anyway, right? So I'd ride back down the line and halter each one and tie them head to tail. And brought about a half dozen of them like that back all the way down from Chilton.
One of the best adventures from this conversation is still to come, and next, Baxter Black looks at donating rodeo style when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at donating rodeo style. B&W builds the trailer hitches that hook the loads that haul the grain, the coal, the cattle, cotton, gas, horses, and RVs that keep America on the road. Quality made, employee-owned, and customer-tuned. B&W trailer hitches working together to keep America proud. Some of y'all might recognize this poem from the rodeo movie 8 Seconds. There's a piece of little finger on a fence out in Cheyenne. They had a wild horse race, and I thought I'd lend a hand. I gave a bite of earlobe to a bronc in Calgary, a souvenir, I reckon, so he'd remember me. A hank of hair is clinging to a light pole in Raton, where we both went up together, but I come down all alone. In Omaha, Nebraska, I left a chunk of chin. I tried to find it later, but I forgot where all I'd been. I left bone chips down in Tucson with the doctor and his nurse, gave blood in Oklahoma just to help me reimburse my partners I was owing for the gas to Angelo, where I'd grudgingly donated a percentage of my toe. An Oakdale Corriente took the tip off of my thumb, and this cast I got in Denver is a little cumbersome. A dog and steer in Billings took a bit of this eyebrow when he thought he'd do some farming and use me for a plow. A bull in Garden City took interest in my nose and peeled the top off of it, for his scrapbook, I suppose. I've got shrapnel in my body from arenas far and near, from Bismarck, Cedar City, Winnemucca, and Pierre, Pendleton, Ellensburg, Shreveport, and Dubuque. When I start to think about it, makes me kind of spook. Though I've made quite a collection, I only think it's fair, because pieces of my body I left scattered everywhere. Enough hide to make a rigging, enough hair to braid a rein, enough teeth to make a necklace, enough nerve to build a brain. I've left a trail of things I've lost, like heart and soul and mind, but them that went before me left some of theirs behind. So I borrowed 'em and used 'em like they meant for me to do, and I'll leave 'em for the next guy, and if that next guy is you, when you run short of courage or losing gets you down, remember them before you left something in the ground, or in the chute or roping box, or floating in the air. It's the ghost of every cowboy who's ever entered there. Every riding, roping outlaw left you some will to win. Just look around you, partner. You'll find a piece of skin. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, brought to you by B&W Turnover Bowl.
Looking for that ideal Christmas gift or stocking stuffer? How about a weekend pass to the 21st Annual Kamloops Cowboy Festival, March 16th to 19th, 2017. A terrific lineup of entertainers including Kevin David.
Early morning finds me out along the Great Divide. I stop and watch the prairie come alive.
Jay Snyder.
Imagine you're a cowboy, and breaking colts is what you do, and you've honed your skills for years and years, and other cowboys look up to you.
The one and only Ben Crane.
Hailing me with checking cows in Saskatchewan sandy hills.
And so many more. There's the BC Cowboy Hall of Fame inductions, dinner shows, evening concerts, a wonderful art and gear show, the Art of the West show and sale, workshops on everything from guitar playing to saddle making. The best place to get all the details is bcchs.com. And for tickets, call 1-888-763-2224. Cowboys who have earned their spurs working on all kinds of outfits, from small family operations of 100 cows or less to the big ones with thousands of mother cows, will no doubt experience a real variety of conditions. All kinds of horses, various kinds of machinery, and the fencing will be immaculate on some places or nearly non-existent on others. And I can identify with the sentiments of some hands who don't mind if the fence lines are in pretty bad shape, because that just means more riding. And I guess that's what inspired Ryan Fritz to write a song called Rawhide Ranch.
When I went to work for a rawhide ranch, I was short on savvy, but I'd soon understand why nobody beats down the gate to work here with all this crazy riding round here. Now Rawhide Ranch is my favorite kind. The owners are thrifty, they nickel and dime. The horses are bronky, the cows are all thin. The fences are ancient and nothing stays in. Oh, Rawhide, Rawhide, Rawhide Ranch. Rawhide, Rawhide, Rawhide Ranch. Oh, the neighbors all curse us to come get our stock, and I feel like a coyote who's cutting the flock. So we ride at nighttime and everyone knows there's a Rawhide Ranch cowboy out there, I suppose. Oh, Rawhide, Rawhide, Rawhide Ranch. Rawhide, Rawhide, Rawhide Ranch. Well, the tax shed is leaky, so they don't buy oats. The owners eat T-bones and we just get goat. You might only get paid every third month. They load up some wildies and sell off a bunch. Now the good thing when cattle will stray like they do just means there's plenty more riding to do. Your backside'll know just what it's like to be tough as rawhide and stretched as tight. Oh, Rawhide, Rawhide, Rawhide Ranch. Rawhide, Rawhide, Rawhide Ranch. My dad taught me to ride for the brand, even if you work for a rawhide man. Oh, Rawhide, Rawhide, Rawhide Ranch. Rawhide, Rawhide, Rawhide Ranch. Rawhide, Rawhide, Rawhide Ranch. Rawhide, Rawhide, Rawhide Ranch.
Now the news of the rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West. We'll tell you what's new under the western sky right after this word from the cattlemen of Western Canada.
Ranching is an important part of our community. From farm to fork, it takes a year and a half to bring beef to your table. It all begins with a calving in the spring of the year. After 6 months in their mother's care, calves are weaned and begin a feeding regimen where they are fed both hay and grain. Ranchers are proud to provide wholesome beef for BC families.
Now, the Rangeland News, top of page 1. By the time you hear this, there is a new president in the White House, and one issue both parties expressed some doubts about was the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. But the National Cattlemen's Beef Association is lobbying hard in favor of it. With more, here's Rod Bain.
While speculation continues on potential congressional action to ratify the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, ag sector leaders say TPP is essential to expanding their markets and profitability. Kevin Kester of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association said TPP member Japan is the #1 export market for U.S. beef. But a separate agreement between Japan and Australia gives Aussie beef exports lower tariffs than U.S. product, which means
U.S. beef producers are losing $400,000 in sales per day.
Kester talking with reporters about a recent White House Council of Economic Advisors report on impacts to U.S. industries if TPP does not pass. U.S. Trade Representative Michael Froman added that with China's growing presence in the Asia-Pacific region,
failure to move ahead with TPP as others move forward not only hurt our exports, but our credibility and our leadership in the region as well.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Meanwhile, in Canada, we watch the price of barley at this time of year, suspecting, of course, that it plays a part in the price feedlots pay for calves and yearlings. And in the U.S., it's the price of corn that folks are watching, according to one report. And demand for corn to fatten U.S. cattle is likely to climb in the short term as ranchers send more breeding females to feedlots to reduce the number of calves coming into supply. But next year, corn consumption could decline as there will be fewer cattle as a result of the current heifer cull. Ranchers are rushing to reduce their herds as per pound prices for cattle hover near 5-year lows, pressured by plentiful supplies of pork and chicken. The number of heifers heading to commercial feedlot pens rose 4% in the quarter ended September 30th from a year ago, according to U.S. Department of Agriculture, and more could be on their way as prices stay low and calves are weaned, according to some experts. And Herman Schumacher, feedlot operator in South Dakota, expects cow-calf operators to cut their herds again because of the financial situation, and that will make it even tougher for feedlots. You know, after a long, cold ride, there's nothing that feels better than settling down in front of our wood stove and picking up a copy of Beef Illustrated or Alberta Beef. And you can subscribe to these great publications at albertabeef.ca or just call 403-250-1090. And speaking of settling down in front of that wood stove, if you're planning on using wood as a heat source this winter, a specialist in bioenergy and agroforestry with Alberta Agriculture has some suggestions. For one thing, moisture content should be around 15 to 20%. Here's how he says you can tell if the wood is dry. Dry wood is lighter than green wood, of course, and if you can see cracks in the ends, it probably is dry. If you bang two pieces together, you hear a different sound from dry wood than moist wood, and the dry wood is darker than green wood. Darker. I thought they just said it was lighter. Oh, that's the weight, not the color. And this expert says to make sure the wood is dry before use. With some experience, it's fairly easy to tell. And a cubic foot of air-dried white birch weighs about 16 kilograms, while the same volume of white spruce weighs about 11 kilograms, so you'd need more spruce to get the same heat value as the birch. And one thing, hardwood species like poplar create less creosote buildup than pine or spruce. And I thought this was interesting. Kobe Hamilton is a wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but this Texas farm boy remembers his roots in agriculture. In a recent interview, Hamilton revealed that he spent his entire $94,000 signing bonus from the Cincinnati Bengals following the 2013 NFL Draft. What did he do with that money? He bought cattle for his parents. They'd sold cattle to fund his college tuition, and Hamilton wanted to pay his parents back for their support while he was in college, but he also admits he has a cow habit, and he attends cattle sales as often as he can. Isn't that a great story? The first infestation of the New World screwworm in the U.S. in 30 years has been confirmed in Florida. And if this pest becomes established in the U.S. again, according to the experts, it could have a devastating impact on the nation's livestock industry and wildlife. The New World screwworms are fly larvae that may infect livestock and other mammals, including people. They usually enter an animal through an open wound and feed on flesh, causing death in 1 or 2 weeks in untreated animals. Here's some of the stuff coming up at the BC Livestock Co-op. December the 6th in Kamloops, it's the Kamloops sale plus a bred cow and heifer sale. December the 8th, it's the regular Williams Lake sale in Williams Lake. And December the 13th, regular Kamloops sale. And if you're wondering about getting liners, stock trailers, body jobs, or whatever you need to get your cattle to the co-op, they have a listing of truckers on their website at bclivestock.ca. And they'll give you the information if you call them at 250-573-3939. And if you're buying or selling cattle in Alberta, Innisfail Auction Market has regular cattle sales every Wednesday, pre-sort sales Mondays, 2 horse sales a month, and lots of special bred cow and heifer sales coming up. For more information, go to InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And that brings us down to the long-awaited final item. You see, it was the last day of school, and all the kids brought gifts for their teacher. Amy, whose dad was a florist and ran a big greenhouse, put a huge bouquet of flowers on the teacher's desk, and the teacher thanked her profusely. Donna put a big box on the teacher's desk, and the teacher, knowing her father owned a grocery store that specialized in chocolates, she smiled and said, "I guess I can guess what's in that box. Is it chocolates?" And Donna smiled and blushed and nodded her head. And then little Freddie put a box on the teacher's desk that had a wet spot on the side. Well, the teacher knew that Freddie's dad owned a liquor store, so she smiled and said, "Freddie, oh my, is that a bottle of whiskey?" And Fred says, "No, teacher." The teacher runs her finger over the wet spot and tastes it and smiles. "Oh, Freddie, is it brandy?" And Freddie says, "No, teacher." And so the teacher kind of frowns and runs her finger into the wet spot again and tastes it again and then says, "I'm sure this must be wine." And Fred says, "No, teacher," again. So in frustration, the teacher says to Fred, "Okay, then what is it?" And Freddie smiles and proudly replies, "It's a puppy." And that's the Rangeland News. Some riders are a little tentative about asking their horse for speed. And I'll look at how you can be more confident, comfortable, and safe riding faster on the Irvine Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. The Irvine Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File is coming right up after this really nice tribute to ranch mothers everywhere. The words are from the great poet Charles Badger Clark, and the music was written by Gene Prescott, and Gene sings it.
She knows the keen of lonely winds, the sound of hooves at night, the creak of unworn saddles in the chill before daylight. She hears the champ of eager bridle bits, the jingle clink of spurs, the clump of boots, lone silence too, for cowboy sons are hers. Her day's new little neighboring, less now perhaps than then. Alone with years she gleans content, her sons are horseback men. She knows, she knows. She knew the dust of cattle trails while yet she was a bride, the tangy smell of branding iron upon a doggy's hide. She heard the yelp of coyotes on a hill, the night hawk's lonely croon, the ball of milling cattle, thus her cow camp honeymoon. Her day's new little neighboring, less now perhaps than then. Alone with years she gleans content, her sons are horseback men. She knew, she knew. Her hands are hard from laboring, her face is brown from sun, but oh, her eyes are deep with dreams of days and duties done. The hand of hardship forged her love, that first far rangeland spring. Now he is gone, its memory lives, a gentle, deathless thing. Her days knew little neighboring, less now, perhaps, than then. Along with years she gleans content, her sons are horseback men. She knows, she knows, she knows, her sons are horseback men. She knows.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Asking a horse for more speed is something some riders are a little reluctant to do, and I'll try and help you get more speed and do it safely and comfortably right after this. Experience the true spirit of the West at Canada's largest Western store, Irvine Tack and Western Wear. If you need a curb strap or a 4-star gooseneck trailer, you'll find it here. A saddle for every rider. Cutters, reiners, penners, trainers, working ranch cowboys, ropers. They have over 1,200 in stock. And they have Western wear for the entire family. And how about a gift card as a Christmas stocking stuffer? Shop online at irvinesaddles.ca. Free shipping on orders of over $100. irvinesaddle.ca, 1-877-946-9494. I had a good visit on the phone recently with our beloved bass player in the Western Spirit Band, my pal Mike. And he always asks if I'm doing as much riding as I like to, and of course I said, every chance I get. And then he said, but maybe you don't ride quite as fast and aggressively as you used to. And I said, well, that's interesting. There are times in the course of a day's ranch work where you need all the speed you can get from your horse to catch and turn a yearling or beat a cow to an open gate. And that led to a discussion about riding with confidence. And I've had a lot of riders say they're okay at a trot, but really feel tentative about going into a lope and really apprehensive about letting that horse really open up and gallop. Well, now it all depends on the degree of confidence you have in your horse and the amount of confidence your horse has in you as a rider. With a well-broke, reliable horse, most riders can get to the place where they're not afraid to ask for speed, but there are several things you want to be sure are in place. Of course, it starts with being able to ride at a comfortable lope or canter, and know what lead your horse is in and be able to feel each footfall through your seat. Once you ask for more speed at the lope, to be able to, as Jonathan Field says, ride every stride and know you've got complete control and can slow the pace anytime you need to. In other words, don't go beyond the speed where you know you can stop your horse in no more than 20 feet. And in the early stages, of course, the footing you're riding on is important. But again, there are times when, yes, even at my age, on my trusted ranch horse, I know it's a little risky, but I don't think about that, and I just ride as fast as I need to through the bush, over the logs and rocks to get to where I need to be. I still love the feeling of sitting in the sweet spot, riding that comfy canter or that easy lope, and then just visualizing more speed and feeling my horse respond. Now, there's much more to this than we have here, but the bottom line is riding with complete confidence in your horse and knowing he's got complete confidence in you. And that's the Irvine Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File. You know, every afternoon about 5 o'clock, you can find my good old buckskin mare Lucky waiting at the gate. She knows it's time for her daily feeding of Hoffman's horse ration. And I think that's why she's still looking so great, even though she's probably 25 years old or maybe quite a bit older. You can find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. And you'll hear another one of those memorable stories Fred Long told me back in 1997, after we look back at a time when the grass was still deep.
When I come to this country, they weren't but 6 stars, and the moon was the size of an egg. Then with brown wheat straw papers and an old roll your own, it pulled stories from a Bull Durham bag. On the porch of the X's, they'd sit swapping tales after the work was complete. These old-time cowboys had done all their living in the days when the grass was still deep. They'd roll smokes and tell jokes and rope cows and ride colts, talk of winters and summers gone by. And I'd sit there and listen for hours on end, and get the coffee when the cups went dry. They'd talk of long days back in the worm time and roping 40 a day, and the old dirty 30s and after the war, but mostly how time slips away. They'd break out in story of old so-and-so. By the way, did you know that he died? Well, no, I sure didn't, till you told me just now. Dang it, he's a good friend of mine. They'd roll smokes and tell jokes and rope cows and ride colts, talk of winters and summers gone by. And I'd sit there and listen for hours on end, get the coffee when the cups went dry. Now, I was just a kid, according to them, but someday I might make a hand. But I'd give a month's wages to know what they knew. I guess they just learned from the land. Don't know if I'll ever live up to them, if I last long and still earn my keep. Well, a kid might just listen, bring the coffee around, and hear the stories of when the grass was still deep. They'd roll smokes and tell jokes and rope cows and ride colts, talk of winters and summers gone by. And I'd sit there and listen for hours on end, get the coffee when the cups went dry. Yeah, I'd sit there and listen for hours on end and get the coffee.
Yeah, that sure is a nice album. Came out last year from Red Stego. Now, Fred Long was a pretty modest cowboy, but you could always see that underlying cowboy pride in everything he did. And he told me about one of those jobs that he actually was pretty proud of.
They sent me out there one time. There was a bunch of long 2-year-old heifers. I'd got out of the Vidan Ranch, and I flew with Johnny Church to find them. And when I went in, a cougar had gone down right past them all and killed a moose at the far end of this little meadow. Hadn't touched the cows, but it killed and buried this moose. And myself and Patrick Whitey got those out of there, and I went back again with a pack horse and run onto a wild horse herd, and the other cows were following those wild horses in order to get something to eat, because the horses would paw, and they'd nose right after them. And so I tied the pack horse up and went beyond where the last place the wildies were pawing, and they were watching me already. They could hear my horse coming, and they smoked it when they seen it was somebody on horseback. And I just kept walking to their trail, because they had plowed trail for me by taking off like that. and I caught one right off the bat, on the back, and pulled it around, got it halter broke, led it back to my pack horse, and a muskrat ran across in front of him, and I shot the muskrat, and I put it on top of the pack, and I came out of that country with this pack horse with the fur on the top and the wild horse tied to the pack horse's tail and 10 head of cows in front of me.
Now that's cowboy performance.
Yeah, I had it all done right there, cowboying and packing and catching wild horses and getting the muskrat fur.
Yeah. Freddie, I've really enjoyed the visit, as I always do when we do get a chance to visit, and I'm sure our listeners have kind of enjoyed being able to eavesdrop here. So just keep doing what you're doing, and maybe we'll do this again 10 or 15 years from now and update things.
Well, my gosh, I'd enjoy that.
And so, unfortunately, Fred rode across the Great Divide before we had a chance to do that. Coming up, it's another classic song of the West and the story behind the song, and then the one and only Andy Nelson in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. This week's Western classic song comes from the pen of Vaughn Horton, and probably his best-known composition was Teardrops in My Heart, made famous by Rex Allen Jr. Vaughn Horton was born in 1911, became a great steel guitar player, and he formed a group known as the Pine Toppers. In 1950, they had a number 3 country and number 10 pop hit with Horton's song Mockingbird Hill. And he later claimed that song that he wrote on a train was recorded more than 400 times and sold in excess of 20 million copies. This one isn't nearly as well known, but it's a great cowboy song, and it's from Hank Snow's Salute to the Pioneers album, the title track, Heartbreak Trail.
A cowboy returned to the scene of his childhood, to his sweet heart of long, long ago. But the day he returned, she was wed to another. 'Tis the story of heartbreak and war. Cowboy riding, sorrow hiding, head bowed, lonesome and blue. Church bells ringing, voices singing, someone said I do. Love's old sweet song was never meant to turn out wrong, even in a cowboy song. But old pal, I guess we strayed too long. Yes, sir. Heaven bless her, keep her, caress her, as we ride the heartbreak trail. Yes, sir. Heaven bless her, keep her, caress her, as we ride the heartbreak trail.
And now, here's Andy Nelson in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight.
I've found a new way to keep up with my pards that seems to be all of the rage. I revel in stalking my cowboy buddies from my very own Facebook page. I'm the jigger boss of my own cyberwall, a social media buckaroo. I ride herd all over my internet range, and all of my buddies do too. I post and I poke, I tag and I like. It seems like the fun never ends. I share and I add, and most all my replies irritate most all of my friends. I'm on the confuser first thing in the morn, asking for side pork recipes. But holding a skillet of splattering grease makes it real hard to take selfies. With smartphone I go as I see to my chores and film the cat having kitties. Then upload a clip of a silly bum lamb nursing on the milk cow's udders. I spend most of the morning passing along unsubstantiated rumors. I ask a few pards about wart remedies and treatments for sarcoid tumors. I don't care much for the political posts. Just like most all of the masses. Pachyderm or burrow, as far as I'm concerned, both parties' mascots are asses. I get all jacked up when a notice comes in. It might be my birthday, or not. Then invite all my friends to join an event called My Party That You Forgot. I keep track of feed days with a status update. I don't do anything by halves. And I make sure to post a new life event each time that a mama cow calves. The joke that I shared of the old spotted donk didn't much seem to offend me, but the appy folks and the mule skinning crowd, all of them want to unfriend me. I get back to the house and upload some pics of me with my new healer pup. A cryptorchid horse colt, a prolapsed old cow, and something the barn cat threw up. I know my old pards will be waiting to hear about my evening ablution, so I share a quick pic of me in the tub with my new dandruff solution. Then I jump in my long johns, flop into bed, and rehash my day on the run. I am worn to a frazzle and don't understand why I don't get anything done.
Well, thank you so much for making the ride today, and I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. And thanks again to our great support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. And if you're looking for tractor and machinery parts, Mark can sure help you find something. All you have to do is look at www.bctractorparts.com. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.